Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the Chair. Well, congratulations are in order for the Bush administration. They've set yet another record, something to be proud of, or at least something that many of their political campaign contributors are proud of, which is the trade policy of the United States, which is a disaster for working Americans and the industrial infrastructure of this country, but immensely profitable for many multinational corporations based in the United States who are very generous campaign contributors. The trade deficit for the first 3 months of 2003 was a new record, $136.1 billion. If we keep that pace up, we will eclipse last year's record trade deficit of $435 billion and reach a $550 billion trade deficit. That means we're losing $1.5 billion a day in U.S. wealth to overseas. $1 million per minute. 53,000 manufacturing jobs were lost alone in May of this year. 53,000 American manufacturing jobs, hollowing out the manufacturing base of the United States of America, formerly the greatest industrial nation on earth. 251,000 so far this year. 34 consecutive months of decline in the manufacturing workforce. These are all record accomplishments of the Bush administration. Now, they told us if they weakened the dollar, this would all get better. Well, the dollar's plummeted, hurting the purchasing power of American and all Americans, yet the trade deficit is continuing to grow larger. How can that be? The economists scratch their heads. You know, theory says your currency goes down, your trade deficit goes away. You don't manufacture things anymore. If you don't export goods, which the United States does precious little of, then it doesn't matter what the value of your currency is, because you're buying overseas. In fact, if your currency goes down, your trade deficit goes up, which is exactly what happened, because you're buying all the manufactured goods overseas. And beside that, the Chinese have illegally, under the WTO, which I'm not a supporter of, but the U.S. is a signatory to, as is China, and the U.S. fought to get them in, has fixed their currency to the U.S. currency. So no matter how low our dollar goes, we're still going to run record trade deficits with the Chinese, who now are the largest holders of U.S. debt overseas. We are not only enthralled to the Chinese for their manufacturing, they can basically threaten the United States, if the United States ever decided to get tough with a lot of the bad things they do over there, with the 30-plus billion or $300-plus billion of our currency that they hold because of the growing trade deficit. This is, you know, a looming disaster for this country. If you look at the record, you know, deficit we're setting domestically, again another record for the Bush administration, be over $500 billion deficit this year, and the trade deficit, the United States of America is going to have to borrow over $1 trillion this year to finance a failed trade policy and a failed domestic financial policy. Borrow over $1 trillion. A lot of that money is going to come from overseas. It doesn't come for free. Let me tell you that. And a good deal of that money is going to come from what was supposed to be the Social Security lockbox, which has been busted open and spent, and is being spent on current consumption, particularly to finance tax cuts for the wealthy. For instance, yesterday's vote to permanently repeal any estate tax on estates over $6 million, 0.4% of the estates in the United States of America, supposedly small family farms, small businesses, and small tree and woodlot folks with over $6 million in assets. I tell you what, $6 million is plenty of an exemption for small businesses. But no, the Bush administration had to go whole hog and go for an exemption of all estates. That'll cost another $60 billion a year, which we'll borrow from Social Security, from working, wage-earning Americans, and send to the wealthy. And they'll, of course, replace the Social Security benefits for those folks. Ha. So what's the good we see in this? Unfortunately, very little. Record trade deficit, failing trade policy. What's the Bush administration propose? Tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts domestically to help the deficit. And then on the international front, well, our trade policy is working so well with a $550 billion looming trade deficit this year. with the loss of 53,000 manufacturing jobs in May, 250,000 lost so far this year. They want to set a new record, so they want more of the same, more so-called free trade agreements. They've got two that are already on the way up here to Capitol Hill that they expect will go through like that. The wheels are greased because these are important people, and this is such a successful policy. It's working so well for whom? Not for American workers, not for our industrial infrastructure, but for a few wealthy benefactors who control those companies. Hopefully, we can bring about and restore common sense here and recognize the fact that you can't run huge and growing deficits forever. Even Alan Greenspan has recognized that. He says this policy is not sustainable.
Mr. Burton of Indiana.